Welcome to Vacation Station, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazines.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio's second Friday food, wine, and travel show with the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We call them IFWTWA. It's a shorter mouthful, but they really are amazing. They're a great organization of travel writers, food writers, photographers, authors, destinations also make up the membership of this organization. And so every second Friday, we get to chat with travel writers about their destinations. And when we do these shows, their editorials also featured in our various Big Blend magazines, all digital, and also on our websites. And today, we're going to be talking about cruising again with Rose Palmer. Now, Rose, her photo was on one of the issues, front cover of Vacation Station magazine, where she was talking about she was sharing her story about cruising the canals on a barge in Europe. And so that was her last time. And today she traded in the barge for a cruise, a river cruise. So this is different, right, than canal cruising, a river cruise with Pandaw on the Mekong River. And this is all of her experiences in Laos, I think also Vietnam, Cambodia. But she's going to tell us all about it today. And it's exciting to have her back on the show. I encourage you to go to her website, quilltripping.com. She likes quilts. Quilltripping.com, and also see her story. It's up on blendradioandtv.com. So welcome back, Rose. How are you?
Fine, I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me back on your show. I look forward to talking about another favorite cruise company that I discovered last fall.
Man, you like to float, don't you? This is cool.
Yes, cruising floats my boat. That's very true. It's a certain type of cruising. I like small boats. I like intimate settings. I like comfort. I like good food, good wine, and if I can get all of that while I'm on the water and see interesting destinations at the same time, that is pure perfection.
You know, I really agree. I was looking at the photos, and the one is that sun deck out on the boat. And it
Yes,
just like you could just sit out, and they position the chairs, which are like, like poolside chairs, but they look wider and more chilled out. And
exactly.
and you just look out to the river, and like it looks like it sounds like it was warm when you were there, which it's Asia, right?
Right.
But
It,
wow,
yeah,
what a
it was
view.
it was warm, but because the boat is moving, there's just a slight gentle breeze, and it was just enough that it made it very pleasant and very comfortable. So we actually on the Laos Pandaw, we actually ate up on deck all but I think the last night when we were parked in Laos's capital in Vientiane, which was the furthest south that we were, and by that point it had gotten quite a bit warmer. And that evening we actually ate inside in the lounge area, which was air conditioned. But the rest of the time we were outside. They had fans set up and going if we needed them, and it cooled off in the evening. So even if the
Nice.
the days were warm and humid, which, as you said, it's Southeast Asia, the slight gentle breeze from the boat moving, and then the fans just was very, very pleasant. And uh, it was wonderful just sitting there in the lounge chair and watching the scenery go by,
Mm.
especially in Laos. So as you mentioned, I did two cruises with Pandaw last fall, two back-to-back cruises. I took their very first Laos cruise after the pandemic when they started back up again. And that was an 11-day cruise. And we started at the border with Thailand and cruised down for 11 days to the capital of Vientiane. And then from there, I flew to Saigon in Vietnam and cruised north through Vietnam into Cambodia, ended in Siem Reap, which is
Mm.
the hometown for seeing Angkor Wat and all the other famous
Mhm.
temples around Angkor Wat. So that was a 7-day cruise, and that's kind of the classic cruise that most people think about when they're thinking of a Mekong River cruise. They're thinking of that lower Mekong through Vietnam and Cambodia. And as a side note, I do want to mention that Paul Strachan, who owns and started the company of Pandaw, he originated the cruises on the Mekong. There are many companies that do them now, but he actually initiated that, and he went through the challenges of work and the bureaucracies of working with the public officials and the governments and the border crossing.
That is not easy, by the way. That
No,
stuff, that red
no.
tape and no. I mean,
Well,
I
now
mean,
it's easy. You know, now
Yeah.
it was pretty seamless. The officials came on board, they looked at our passports, had a couple of cups of coffee, some pastries, and in a couple of hours it was all done. But he writes about his experiences in one of his books, and it's just fascinating reading what it took to get those first cruises along the Mekong, you know, and crossing that border. It was days. The first one took a couple of days to
Wow.
get across that border and get from one country to the other. And yet now, you know, it seems like everyone is doing it. So I just wanted to make sure to mention that you know, he originated these itineraries, which many people now look forward to doing. And then the
I-
Laos cruise, they're
I just want to stop
actually,
on that with him
yes,
because it's interesting
sure.
that he had a book. You know, and I think that's something really cool because there's pioneers in tourism and people follow suit, and that's what, you know, makes a region flourish in
Right,
tourism, you know, and
right,
this is a light-footed kind of cruise. You know, the big ocean ones versus the river cruises, it's a night and day difference.
exactly.
And this is a very light footed kind of vessel. It's made of teak that you were saying. So I just want to kind
Yes.
of back up so people understand how intimate and how you know, he really is. And I think it's great. Did you get to read the book on the boat or like on the ship? It's
Well,
not, doesn't feel
I
like a ship.
started, they did have paper copies of the book on the boat, and I started, but I was just too distracted with everything else, and then I ended up downloading the digital version. The book is called The Pandaw Story, and he talks about how he and his wife got into building these boats. So they actually started with one boat in Burma, which is now Myanmar, way back in the 90s. And then from there built a company with you know, added a couple of more boats in Burma and then expanded to other parts of Asia. And now they're also in India. But
Oh, wow.
they're very intimate. The Laos Pandaw that I was on, which was on the Laos portion of the Mekong, has only 10 cabins. So, you know, at the most, if the cabins are the double occupancy, at the most you'll have 20 people. The classic
Wow.
Mekong, which was through Vietnam and Cambodia, those are slightly larger boats. They're but even those only have 30 cabins on 3 levels. So you're talking at the most 60, which again is and we were not full either one of those cruises at that time because this was last fall and they were just getting started coming back up again. The boats were not full, but they're gorgeous boats. They're just absolutely beautiful, built with a lot of love and craftsmanship. Mr. Strachan designed them, and they were built according to his specifications. They're made out of local teak from the region, brass. They have that classic colonial look, and they're designed after a series or a group of boats back from the turn of the century and early part of the 20th century that are called the Irrawaddy Flotilla. And there's, you know, there's a lot of information on that out that you can search on it, but they're inspired by those boats, and they really look like they belong in this environment that they're sailing
Yeah,
through.
that's what I was going to say. He seems to, his vision, and just reading your article and looking at the images and everything, it just seems like his vision, it's kind of like, you know how Frank Lloyd Wright designed according to nature, right?
Right. Yes.
I feel like that's something very interesting because like when you look at ships, and we look at hotels, are the hotels going according to, do they have integrity to sense of place? Are they historic? Do they, and even if they're brand new, are they designing their hotel accordingly? Do they have a restaurant? Are they serving local food? Right? All
Right.
of that kind of stuff. And I think for authentic travel and, travelers that want to really experience a region, this is very, and I have to say it in you being on the show before and other writers and kind of, I at one point kind of thought, oh, well, you're not really experiencing a region if you're on a boat, right? Like you're doing the water thing and you're not experiencing it. Now you've all changed. Thank you, IFWTWA. I'm just going to say, all the writers, you've all changed my mind. Because I realize, of course, you have these excursions, but it's kind of like the boats have to be part of the setting and have integrity to the places that they're traveling through. So that's kind of, because it's a moving vessel, it's not a stagnant, like a statutory, or not
Right.
statutory, a stationary building, that it has to kind of blend in with all the regions it's going through to have that same feeling, vibe, atmosphere, and also not kind of ruin the view of
Right.
the area, just even for the locals.
Yes. Yes. His boats are not big white boxes, just floating down the river. They are of their environment. And as far as at least in here on the Mekong, saying that being on the boat, you don't really get to experience it. We want to remember that for these countries, the river is still their lifeblood. Life revolves still on the river and around the river. So, we would pass people fishing, people in these big long boats that they would actually live on. So the villages, many villages are built along the bank, and even the ones that are further up the hillside. So Laos is very hilly. I was very, very surprised. I didn't know what I was going to go see. I didn't have time to do a lot of homework. I was going to be in Southeast Asia for a conference. So I thought, you know what? I'm there. Let me just do this and be surprised. And I was really very, very, very pleasantly surprised at how green and lush and hilly, almost mountainous, Laos is, and very, very unspoiled and undeveloped as we cruised down the river. Unlike the lower part of the Mekong, when as we were going through Vietnam and parts of Cambodia, that part of the delta was much more developed. I would say there were actually cities there that we passed by, and
Wow.
with big buildings, but here, it's just you see the villages, and sometimes you don't even see the villages because they're set up on the hillside, a little bit away from the bank. So the river is still the lifeblood. So you're actually
Yeah,
part
like
of
the
it,
Nile. Yeah.
and yeah, exactly. I just came from the Nile, and it's very similar.
Yeah, wow. Okay. She's
Um,
floating again.
Yeah, I'm floating. That's me. I'm floating all around the world. But yeah. So I like to say that I really this cruise in Laos in particular, but both of them, I really felt like I was part of the scenery. In part, as you said, because of the design of the boat, and also because the river here still is a very important part of the livelihood and the lives of the people in these countries. And so you
I
get to
love
see
that.
that.
And because you got to get out too. So
Yes.
that's what the excursion part I think is so crucial too, because that's what I was saying before. I always thought everybody's on a ship and they're just cruising. And look, I am a huge fan of sitting on a boat and drinking wine and watching the world go by. I mean, that's, and like train rides and things like that. Like that, I mean, if I could be in a limo going across the country, but then the limo has to go on dirt roads. I guess that's what we do. But sorry, I want to see wildlife, but can I have my champagne too? It'd be really nice. But that's the thing. When you go on these cruises, they stop, you get to get out, and so you get to interact with the communities that
Right.
are connected to the river that you're going down. So you get to have that real tactile feel and understanding about that lifeline that you're talking about, that lifeblood.
Exactly.
This is it. So
Exactly.
yeah, tell us a little bit about getting off the boat, what you experienced. Is it
Well,
a boat? Do we call it a boat? It's a ship, it's a
sure,
boat,
yeah, sure. Well, it's I don't really, I'm not
a
really quite sure
vessel.
what the distinction is between boat and ship. You know, what size does it go from a boat to a ship? But um, so one of the
Yeah.
things I loved about Pandaw is they go out of their way to provide unique experiences. Even if we're stopping in some of the typical tourist, or sites that people really want to make sure that they visit. So Luang Prabang in Laos was a must to stop at. It's a
Mm.
UNESCO, the town is a UNESCO World Heritage
Oh,
Site.
wow. Yeah.
It's it's the religious heart of Laos. But even there, and then even as we stopped and visited the little villages, they really went out of their way to provide unique experiences. So they would pick a village and we would just pull up to the bank. They'd drop the gangplank. The crew would go out and they would dig stairs into the sand, up the bank, so that we could, all get up there easily. Um, I like to think it had nothing to do with the average age of the guests. It had
Mhm.
just more to do with courtesy. But regardless, we didn't have to struggle climbing up these sandbanks or the hillsides to get to the villages. And then we would walk around, in a few of the villages, the women would see us coming and they would lay out their crafts, and for us to
Oh,
peruse, and if we were interested in buying beautiful things, be scarves and little bags, and handcrafted, cross-stitched, hand-stitched
oh, here she
items.
goes. She's getting in there. They're saying quilttripping.com is the website. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly. And I mean, I hate to say it, but for a steal, it's silk scarves that the women would, make on handmade looms in their
Ooh,
homes for $4. It just, it was hard not to want to get one of everything.
I
It's
bet.
beautiful. And they'd be there with their children, and the children would be running around, playing, laughing, the young ones that weren't in school. And we would just, walk through the villages and really see how they lived. And we learned about the different sub ethnic subcultures within
Hmm.
Laos, and the different ethnic subgroups. And you had one group that lived lower down on the hillside, and then another ethnic group that lives kind of in the middle of the hills, and then one that lives higher up. And then each one has, a slightly different way of how they build their houses and how they live in their houses. And so, so our guide spoke excellent English. He was local, obviously, and he would explain all these nuances and what we were looking at, and why is this rice drying here in the sun on a tarp, and where do they get it from, and I know, how is this village making their living, and just all sorts of little things like that, which if I was traveling on my own, there's no way that I would have been able to do that at all. I might
Oh,
be able to
that's a
go
good
to
point.
Luang Prabang because it's a city, and it has an airport, and it has hotels, and I could tour that on my own. But I certainly couldn't pass through these villages and interact intimately with the local
Yeah.
people, and really kind of for a few minutes anyway, for half an hour, sort of connect with them,
Yeah.
and get a sense of what their lifestyle is like. And they were happy. They didn't live like I do, but they seemed, they certainly seemed happy.
But
And
that's a thing in like in Africa is like that too, man. It's
right,
like
right,
it's our happiness depends on our soul. And bad
exactly.
things happen, sorry, in all of these countries and in
Hmm.
our country, right?
Right,
Um, so there's always that negative everywhere, no
right.
matter where you go. But I do believe Asia really does work on having like, Bhutan is like that. The
Hmm.
happiness factor is
Right.
part of it, life. And Cambodia, though, Cambodians, I mean, that is, I mean, there's stuff going on out in those areas too. But
Oh,
um,
Cambodia, I mean, talk about a difficult history.
yeah, I mean, that's some deep stuff. I mean,
Right. And we did, and I'll let you know, so when I was on that cruise through Vietnam and Cambodia, when we were in Phnom Penh, one of the excursions was to go see the killing fields, and then
ugh,
um there's one of the schools that the Khmer Rouge used as for torture and for prisoners and all. And I have to tell you, I really had to think about, do I want to go see this? You know, I've
mm,
been to Europe, I've been to the concentration camps. I don't need to be, I don't need a physical reminder of man's inhumanity to man.
mm,
I know it's there. I've read enough history. You know, I don't need to be educated on it. But at the same time, because as a travel writer and photographer, I felt I also had a responsibility to share this with others who would not be able to go
mm,
there and see
good
what
point.
it looks like now. So in the end, I did go, and I'm glad I went, because it was a very obviously moving, but also a very interesting experience to see how they've memorialized and how they make sure that they don't forget it and the future generations don't forget what happened there at both of those sites. So that, yeah, that's
Yeah,
and but at the same time, when when you speak with the people in Cambodia, I don't think there was a single person that we interacted with. So we had some of the staff on the boat were from Cambodia, or when I toured Siem Reap and that area with the guides there and my driver, and you ask them, well, about that time period, and there isn't a single person that didn't have a family member that was not impacted by what happened when the Khmer Rouge were in power. And yet they seem to have gotten past it and shed, to some degree, have been able to shed that history and just kind of move forward in a positive manner. At least the people that we interacted with, that's
yeah,
how they
yeah.
presented it.
Well,
So,
yeah, you can't live in the past, but it's a terrible past.
mhm,
I mean, it's same as, in our country, we're still, looking at what we've done slavery wise, and um and you can't dismiss it. You've got
no,
to still
no,
face it so that, and remember it, and not let it happen again. And unfortunately, like, slavery is happening all over the world still to this day and in our backyard. So we can't ignore it. But I think it's what you're saying is so valuable about still going. We don't want to see these things. And a lot of people, we want to close our eyes. We don't want to see it. We don't want to be upset by it. But um, I think there's something to be said about seeing how people handle situations, because
yes,
I think we all handle situations in our life, right? Or
right.
try to. And when you go to places like this and you experience it, doesn't it help us in life as writer, going to travelers, to understand situations better in a way and kind of put things in perspective? Like, if you're upset about something, are we going to be as upset about it when we've been to a place like this where you've seen true things that have really been bad? You know what I mean? Everybody's
Hmm.
got a different level of upsetness, right?
Right.
But you can put things in perspective when you travel and go places. And then when you see things like, movies about Vietnam and read stories, and we do like a military history show every first Monday, and we talk about soldiers that weren't even, 100% trained, that ended up in Vietnam and things. And how did they know, like, if you're, from a different part of the country here, and the training, were you really well enough trained and equipped to go out suddenly in the jungle of Vietnam and be able to understand too,
Right.
Um, so there's so many stories from all of this, but when you set foot, I think, in going to battlefields and places like that are very, very difficult, because it's
Hmm.
just kind of, holy cow, people really, really sacrificed in some way,
Yeah.
or were victimized, right?
Hmm.
But either way, your survival so you did what you needed to do for your survival, however you could best handle it. And when you're there, it's like, wow, like we do not want that stuff no more, and it's just kind of, I don't know, just also just the human spirit, you know? And what's crazy,
yep.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, and I saw a lot of that because, as I said, the Laos Panda I was on, that was the very first cruise after the pandemic. So we saw a lot of that same spirit of just keep on going and survival
Resiliency.
and resiliency with the crew. They had that part of the world, they had a tough 2 years. The folks, the crew on board, they didn't have, many of them didn't have any other resources, so they just managed to survive somehow.
Oh,
And thing eat, survive on insects or eating insects or just whatever they could find, odd jobs, just
wow.
until they could get back to what they're doing on the boat. And so I think what made the Laos Pandaw cruise so special was that there was it was almost a palpable sense of happiness for them to be back on board doing what they had been trained to do and what they enjoyed doing, and making it a really good experience for the guests. And I think just the happiness to be sort of back to normal, or some kind of normal. And I think it was almost tangible, feeling that happiness. And it was especially evident. So I talk about in the article I wrote for you, and the one for also on my website. One of the best experiences I've ever had was on the Laos Pandaw. They do this for every cruise. The boat pulls up to one of the sandbanks. The river has a lot of large sandbanks in that along that part of the river. The boat pulls up, drops anchor, and then the crew sets up a barbecue on the beach. Essentially, it's like being on the beach. They pulled out all these plastic chairs. They covered them in white chair covers, wrapped gold ribbon bows around them. Set up candles. They made candle covers out of bamboo, and then put candles, and that lit the way to the boat.
That's so cute.
They set up some music. They brought out a grill, and they cooked all sorts of different skewers and kebabs and meat skewers and vegetable skewers, and had a drinks table, and it didn't take them long for the Mai Tais to start flowing.
Oh yeah, I
and
like
it
the
just
cocktail pictures, by the way. It seems that they made sure, like you were talking about, oh, there's fans and breezes and everything. And I'm going, yeah, but it looks like you had some chill cocktails to keep
Oh
you
yes,
also
well
refreshed.
we had cocktail hour every evening. But yeah, so that particular evening, there was just something so magical about it. It was as the sun set, and you get that beautiful blue hour, and you've got the boat is lit up, and you've got the candles lighting the way, and then they lit a bonfire, and we have soft music playing, and good food, and just good camaraderie with the other guests. And by this was midway through the cruise, so by this point now we know the crew quite well, and we're chatting and talking and joking around with them. And it was just one of those evenings. And then to top it off, they had what are they called, the lanterns. So for each one of us, they those big paper lanterns, and then you light a candle in it, and it floats up into the sky, that you see them doing in Southeast Asia. So they had one for each of us, and so each one of us got to light this big lantern and make a wish, and then set it off up into the sky. And that's how we ended the evening. But it was
Wow.
absolutely one of the most memorable and magical evenings that I've ever had. And it as I was experiencing it, I just couldn't help thinking of, this is absolutely perfect. I will never have anything this good or just like this, again. I need to enjoy every single second. It was just,
See, but that's what I say. I think this is really a special thing about the river. I mean, this is a very unique. I mean, your barge cruise was really cool too. So I'm just saying, like, apparently
Yes.
you know how to pick your float. I'm just going to call you from cool tripping to flotillas. You're floating.
Yeah,
But
float tripping.
yeah, float tripping. I know, but I think there's just something. It makes me feel at home. Like I don't know if it's just it connects me back to Africa in some way.
Hmm.
Because we were in the tropical side in Kenya too, and um, so it just kind of made me feel more relaxed. And when you wrote about the barbecue and everything, and hearing you talk about it, it's just that I feel like sometimes we get over the top crazy in luxury,
Hmm.
where you need to have. This is a luxurious barbecue, though, right? But it
Well,
wasn't over the top crazy.
yeah,
You know what I
so
mean? It wasn't
yeah.
like if you wanted to be barefoot in the sand, you could. Then no one's
Oh, well,
gonna
yeah.
care,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
right?
We were.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And
So,
I love the part when you said that you had to surrender your shoes. That's what I think, surrender your shoes. And so
right.
this is interesting because there's so many places you go where, you know, you're like, oh, as we pets at the country, right? They're like,
Hmm.
suddenly go to the house, you have to take your shoes off. And I'm like, dang it, I wore the wrong socks today. You know, you know what I mean?
They
Because
don't
I'm
match,
always
huh?
yeah, yeah. I'm like, or
Right,
like there's a hole with my toe poking out or
right,
whatever. It's just the way it is. And I'm like, oh, you have to surrender your shoes. And then he said, then they clean them and give them back to you in your room.
right,
So, like, I know the Hawaiian culture is very much like you don't want to bring in the stuff from there to here, and
right.
there's spiritual beliefs with this. So tell me a little bit about that, because I know a lot of people probably will go, what do you mean you're going to take my shoes?
Well,
It's like,
so
take your
when we
phone. It's the worst if you take your phone away, right?
no, they didn't. Yeah, no, we didn't take the phones away.
No, no, just
But
kidding.
so when we came on board, every time we came on board for an excursion, one of the crew would be there with a cold, wet towel, which was, again,
Mm,
Southeast Asia, hot, humid. So that was
nice.
very nice to be able to, wipe your face and your hands. And then another crew member there was with a nice little refreshing drink, non-alcoholic, just something nice and cold and very flavorful. And then they wanted us to take off our shoes and they would clip them together, with the number of our room, and then they would clean them. And it's it was kind of twofold reason. It makes their life easier on the boat if you're not tracking
Hmm.
all this dirt from the villages and from wherever you've been walking, um onto the gangplank and onto the boat and into your room. It really makes it a lot easier. So it's there's a practical element to it. And the first time it did take me a little bit by surprise. It's like, oh wow, you're going to clean my shoes for me, that's really nice. But um yeah, within with in under half an hour, if even that long, they would be outside my door or sometimes inside my cabin. I never locked my cabin. Why do I need to lock my cabin? And nice and clean and ready to go for the next day. So if you do a Pandaw river cruise, bring a pair of shoes for walking around on deck that are nice and comfy and easy to get in and out of, and then a pair of shoes for gym shoes or whatever for your excursions and walks
Mm.
and in town and all that. But
I think
yeah, so
I think shoes should always be on the comfort level when you travel.
exactly,
Period.
yes,
Don't try to do
yes.
high heel. Like, who
Oh, no,
does
no, no, no,
anybody
no,
wear high heels?
no, no, no.
I can't remember the last time I wore high heels.
Right.
It didn't. Oh, we had to
Oh,
do a seminar. We had to speak at a seminar. And then then you go, oh, let's do this. And then you try to stand up in a seminar and be the speaker. Yeah, that was stupid. Let me just tell you. We had to have a Bloody Mary very quickly because it hurt. It hurt. It hurt. It was not a good experience. But no, I
right,
think this is those little details that I think for travelers, and that's what, you know, travel writing is about. Is you don't you feel like when you go to places like this, you want everyone to know, like you, and then but you want the right people to go because it's such a magical
right.
experience. You don't
It
want
is.
someone to ruin the experience for the crew, because don't you get attached to the crew?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, you spend, even on the shorter one, the 7-day one, you get to know them because so we had 19 crew on both boats. On the Laos Pandaw. There were only 9 of us because, again, it was the very first one after the pandemic. So, we had 19 people taking care of
That's
9 of
nice.
us, and most of those 19 are behind the scenes because you've got to run the boat, you've got a big kitchen, you've got to people cleaning. So the front facing staff isn't obviously 19, but you get to know the front facing staff very quickly. They very quickly get to know what you like to drink for breakfast. Do you like hot food for in the morning for breakfast? Do you just want coffee? Do you want tea? What kind of cocktails do you like? What kind of cold drinks do you like? And then how spicy do you like your food? So they're very attentive, and they very quickly get to know you, but not in an obtrusive, clingy way. Just very friendly. And yes, we did get, I did feel by the end of it that I was saying goodbye to close
Mm,
friends, or even family that I was treated like family, and they kind of
mm,
feel that way because they take their ambassadorships for their country very seriously, and that's how they see their roles on the boat. I think, as ambassadors and representative of these countries that we're passing through, and I really felt like they were trying very hard to present a very hospitable um presentation
hmm
of
They're
their
proud.
culture.
Yeah, they're proud. They want to have pride
Yes,
and
yes,
show off like,
yes.
hey, this is, and I think that's part of putting history aside to move forward. That resiliency is about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
um, in Africa, like no matter how bad it is, no matter how poor someone is, they will shine their shoes. I don't care how bad the shoes are, they will shine the shoes.
Right,
And they
right.
will put those shoes on and smile, even if they're broken and the
Mm-hmm.
soles are gone. And I think that's a lesson for all of us. And I
Yes,
think travel really kind of makes you get over. It is. I mean, as a traveler, don't you feel that traveling and going to these different countries and connecting with the crew, whether it's the restaurant people, the cruise ship people, the riverboat people, the airline staff, that you're actually dealing with people one on one with something that we're all going to have to get along to make this work.
right,
You know what I mean? And
right.
there is an intimate experience. And you realize like these people work their butts off in the
Oh, they do.
hospitality industry.
They
Oh my
do.
gosh. And they have to smile no
And they
matter
have to
what's going
smile.
on.
And they have to
You never
smile.
know what's
Right,
going on for
right,
them in their own
right,
personal life, right?
right,
And they smile.
right,
Retail is the
right,
same, right? You
right,
smile.
right,
No matter what, you will smile.
right. And we had a lot of smiles, but I felt on the Pandaw ships, I really felt like the smiles were very authentic. So part of
Real,
the
yeah.
experiences on both ships was behind the scenes tours. So we got to see the kitchen area, you know, and the
Cool.
laundry area and the engine room. And oh my God, were the engine rooms clean. If you're a Star Trek fan, Scotty would have been proud.
Dude,
um,
I'm in. I'm in. I listen, you have me sold
I
on
mean,
this.
you get my
Yeah.
reference then. Um,
Yeah.
and then in the bridge, and watching the boat captains, as they're taking us downriver or upriver. But there was a definite pride and sense of ownership for their the tasks that they were doing and for the boat that they were on.
Mm,
Yes, it was jobs, but at the same time, I really felt like it was also their homes, because
mm,
they live on the boat for extended
right.
periods of time. So I really felt a very strong sense of pride
Mm.
in in these boats, and I think that was another reason that I really enjoyed these cruises,
Mm.
for that reason, very much so.
So what about the food? I want to touch on that. I know you had this amazing barbecue, but
Hmm.
a lot of people may be like concerned about, okay, am I going to be able to eat
Oh,
Southeast Asian
yes.
food?
Oh my gosh, yes. So
Okay, I
that's
asked
the
a
other thing.
question.
Yeah, so I mean, that was the other thing that was very, very nice, is that I love local authentic food, but after a while, I want my grilled cheese sandwich,
Yeah,
for
your body has to, it's an acclimation. I mean, they always say about Anthony Bourdain took antibiotics by the time he came home. It was like antibiotics was the first thing he reached for because like I mean, how much local authentic food can you do? You
right.
know,
And what I really liked about Pandaw is that for each meal there were Western choices, and then there were Southeast Asian choices. So if I wasn't in the mood for rice and freshwater, shrimp dish or freshwater prawns, I could have uh chicken or
Mhm.
beef or soup. And there was always, the soups were fantastic. There was always soup at lunch and dinner. There was always a nice
Mm.
selection of a variety of salads, not just kind of your typical green salad, but just different types of salads. Very flavorful. And then there were also cheeses and French bread that they made on board,
Oh,
and
wow.
rolls that they made on board.
Wow.
Um, and pastries, and there would be, Asian inspired desserts, and then there would be kind of your typical, Western desserts that you
Hmm.
might see in
That's a
France or
smart call from them because I think yeah, I think there's only so much your body's going to handle of something new
hmm
immediately. But I also think it's cool that they're introducing you to their local dishes. But I'm sure they also have, clientele that come from the cities and do these cruises too. I mean, that may just locally.
Yeah, I don't know if they do or not. I don't know if, I think Pandow mostly markets to the Western countries, but
Right.
they actually on the one boat, the Mekong, the lower Mekong, the first part of it, we did have a few travel agents that were local. They were doing a fam tour, and they were local from Vietnam. And so you're right, they probably do have some, they get some of the locals on board as well. But I think for them, the Southeast Asian dishes probably would have been much too bland.
Oh
They
yeah, because
really,
they tame it down for
they
yeah, the
toned it down for
tourists.
us. Yes, they toned it down. So even what I might have thought would be a little bit on the spicy side, I'm sure for the locals, they would have said it had no flavor at all. But that's
Wow,
what I
it's
like.
amazing. This just sounds like such an amazing trip. Everyone, you've got to go. If you go to Asia, you got to do this. I want to go. I really want to go. Like it's just you guys. Like I was saying, you and some of the travel writers coming on the show through IFTWA have kind of changed my mind on it because I'm such a driver. I like to
Yeah,
drive places and stuff, and now I'm kind of going. And maybe it's my age now. I don't know. I just kind of I want to float and look out and I want to be able to get off the boat. That
right.
is a huge deal to me. And to be able to just get off and walk and not be on a huge boat, that is also a big deal for me. To
Exactly.
just
Right.
personally,
Right.
everybody's got their thing. And big ocean cruises are for a lot of people, but and I'm not knocking any of it. Everybody's got their thing that they want to do and if you can do it, man. But to me the river cruises and the barge cruises and these very unique small ships intrigue me because I love the fact that it's chilled out, relaxed. It's not like you're on board a city and it's like you kind of blend in with the atmosphere. That's
Right.
kind of like how I like to travel in general. It's like I just want to chill out and not be like the tourist. I just want to chill out. And this seems very chilled out and with good cocktails and wine time overlooking a river while you float in a breeze. This is perfect. But Rose, I have to ask, I know you're going away. I mean, we're getting this recorded before you fly off for a 2-month excursion in Europe. Tell us a little bit of is IFTWA helping you at any part of this? Is like being a member of IFTWA, does that help in regards to, you know,
Not
connecting
this
on
one.
trips and
Yeah.
contacts?
Not this time. The when I last fall when I traveled, some of that was as a result of IFTWA. This time I'm going to a travel bloggers conference in Greece, and then
Nice.
before that doing another small, and maybe next time we can talk about this cruise. It's a small sailing ship called Running on Waves. It's beautiful type of boat called a barkatine, and a true sailing vessel, like like tall ship type of ship. And again, only 20 cabins, something like that, maybe even less.
Oh, wow.
And it's this is my second time with them, as a matter of fact. And I'm just going to do a couple of the Greek islands before I head to my conference.
Nice.
And going to do some sightseeing in Greece, and then eventually I will end up in Italy, and I'm going to be doing another barge cruise with European Waterways, but this time in Italy, from
Mm,
Venice along the Po Canal to Mantua for 6 days. So it'll
nice.
be another small boat floating experience.
She's floating. The cool tripper is floating.
I'm
I
floating,
like this.
yes,
Yeah, I
floating.
know. I think you need a quilt for each of these experiences, you
Well,
know?
yeah, I haven't been home long enough. I've only been home a few weeks this time, so I didn't really have a chance to make something for this trip. I do like to make quilts that, inspired by my travel destinations. And I did have one for Asia. Actually, I traveled around for 6 weeks in Asia with a quilt that I had made out of silk.
Oh,
And I photographed it in a bunch of different places that were very typically Asian. So you can tell that in temples and settings that were very typically Asian. Because that's why it's called quilt tripping, because I like to travel, I like to take photos, and then when I am home and I have time, I like to make quilts that are inspired by my travels, and then I'll take them with me and photograph them. But this time around, unfortunately, I wasn't home long enough, and I have no room in my suitcase because I'm traveling for so long. It's kind of packed.
I think you need to have like a little mascot like Nancy and I are. We have our pink sock monkey, Priscilla, and she
Oh,
goes, the poor little thing is falling apart. This little girl she's an elder now. But and during the pandemic, we had to put her away because people like to pick her up, and some people coddle her like they're, I don't know, they go back to childhood or something with her.
mm.
And now she's elder. And I'm like, get your hands off my monkey. But no, people recognize her. It's crazy.
Okay.
We've been to places and they're like, where's Priscilla? And I'm like, what? Who are you? Yeah, we want to see Priscilla. I'm like, this is weird. But I was just thinking, like, if you had like a something,
Yeah,
and
that's an
instead of
idea.
something, you
You're
could
right.
wear like you could give a different quilt dress or a you know what I mean?
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
something, or oh, I know what you could do. You know, I don't know if you handwrite anything, do any of us anymore. But you could get like a journal, right? And then cover it with a quilt.
Oh, there's an idea. That's a very good
Yeah.
idea.
But I love
Hmm.
what you're doing with quilts. And Nancy and I have such a big thing about quilts. And
Okay.
I think quilts always tell a story,
They do.
and we're the blend, and that's how it is because quilts connect things together in a story. And I think we're aligned on that kind of
Yeah. Yep.
thing. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, look at the stories you just told from a river cruise, in Laos and Vietnam, Cambodia. Look at all these stories of the people and the crew and the barbecues and the villages. I mean, and then going into the textiles. So suddenly it's silk, right?
Right. And that was one of the actually I think we went to 2 different silk places and saw how they wove the silk fabric, and went from all the way from the process, from that was one of the excursions where we saw it go all the way from the the silkworm to the
Mm,
cocoon, to removing the silk thread from the cocoon, to spinning it and then weaving with it. So we
mm.
and dyeing it. We saw that whole process. That was just fascinating. Um, that's
I had
yeah.
silkworms when I was a kid in South
Did you?
Africa. I had silkworms because we had mulberry trees, and then
Oh yeah, yeah.
so there's a whole thing about mulberry trees and silkworms, and I had silkworms,
Okay.
and I fed them, and they did those silk cocoons. And then I looked, I mean, it's pretty magical. These things will come
It
out different
is.
colors. I mean, people would dye stuff and whatever. I didn't do that, but like it was, they look like it's almost like a Cheeto, depending.
Yes,
But
you're
you know what I
right.
mean? It's like a cheese puff more than a
Uh-huh,
Cheeto.
it
And
is.
but it's like woven, and it's absolutely amazing what nature does. Like
Yeah.
when you look at it's almost edible looking, and then like cotton candy edible kind of, but then like that came out of a worm. You may not want to, but I mean that whole process as a kid doing the silkworm thing, I think
Yeah.
I drove my mom nuts because then I was like, I want a silkworm farm. Let's go. But I didn't do anything with I mean, it was kind of crazy, but they're beautiful, aren't they?
It's
Like the
such a it
colors.
is. It is such an interesting process. And then when you see how fine that thread is,
That's what I
and
mean.
then
Yeah.
when somebody takes that thread and is actually, uses it to weave and make a piece of fabric that's so delicate and brightly
Oh,
colored, just beautiful. Yeah. Yep.
weaving is a huge other deal, man. That's a whole
Mm-hmm.
other, I don't know. I've watched weavers, Navajo weaver in a hotel in Gallup, and she was doing the weaving, and I'm just like, wow, look at that. You know where your designs are going. I mean, I've watched a lot of weavers, but like I don't know how they know what they're doing, but they do it, and it's
Right.
beautiful.
Right.
I'm going to be one of those people that have to keep taking it out, you know,
So that was
like
actually one of my excursions in Luang Prabang. There was a non-for-profit organization that we went to that has uh, that provides a resource for the women in the local community where they can sell their hand woven products and materials
Mm,
that they make. And then they also offer classes. So I had the afternoon free. There was no organized tour or anything. We were on our own to sightsee. So I asked, could they set me up with one of the classes here? This is called Ok Pop Tot in Luang Prabang. And so I did an afternoon weaving class. And the lady that I worked with, the instructor, her English was very, very minimal, just enough to kind of really be able to kind of instruct me very basically on what I had to do. And somehow
mhm.
she managed to get me to make this little weaving. I went home with this little, maybe 12-foot long woven piece with a pattern in it. And I wove the whole thing. Now, granted, she had already set up the loom ahead of time, and she manipulated all the different parts of it to get the design.
Mhm.
So all I had to do was just move that
Oh,
shuttle back and forth with the thread and coordinate by my hands and my feet to get that done. But it was still such a neat, this was a traditional wooden loom, and everything on that loom was sustainable. So it was all made from wood and bamboo, other than
wow.
the metal teeth of the comb that you use to you know to
Yeah,
tighten
but that
your
stays.
fabric. But
Yeah.
otherwise everything was just from local products. It was just amazing. It
Wow.
was it was a really neat experience. So I came home with this little um piece of pretty fabric that I've just used to
Nice.
display.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that you end up with a house of collections from these?
Right,
I
right,
think it's
right.
about the experiences. I have a
Very
friend right
much.
now in Europe. She's in Edinburgh, and she right now today she's like it's been hours and I'm still grinning. She went to a farm and got to hang out with baby sheep and border collies and got into the experience and actually sheared a sheep and learned all of it, but got her hands dirty. And I think that's something in travel that we want as travelers. We need to
Yes,
get our hands dirty. We need to have the activity, but not necessarily like the touristy stuff. We want
right.
to actually immerse ourselves in, we want to be giving back in a way. So,
Yes.
like, you know what I mean? That we understand we can, and as travel writers, obviously we're sharing, but I think this is something to really look at when we travel is what can we do to learn, immerse ourselves in, and then something maybe that we can give back to too. And I think volunteering, there's all kinds of things too. But I love that you were able to do that while cruising, like on a
And that's
riverboat.
one of the things I really like about Pandaw is when you dig a little deeper into their story, they take some of their profit, and they do give it back. They have some medical facilities that they have set up in, I want to say Burma, but maybe the other countries as well. And they do continuously give back to
Mm,
these communities, because they are only in Asia. So many of these other cruise companies, they're global. They're all over the world. But
right.
Pandaw, I mean, you can think of Pandaw think of it as a local boutique hotel that is
Floating.
only, but floating, and you're only going to find it in that particular location. That's exactly
Hmm.
what they are. You're only going to find them in Asia, and they know their environment. They know the product and what the people and what there is to see and the history, and they know how to connect the travelers coming from other parts of the world to that location, because that is all that they do.
Mm.
And I think
Yeah,
that's why I really liked these two cruises, because it it felt like a very boutique, you know, bespoke is being overused these days, but it felt very much
yeah.
like that.
And everyone, the website is pandaw.com. It is PANDAW, pandaw.com, to have a look. And when you go, you got to go look at their website's awesome too. I mean, I love they do so many cool things. Like there's a whole package just for single travelers.
Yes,
They have, educational adventures for under 18 years old. They really do seem to have a um just they're responsible. They're a
yes,
responsible
very
uh,
much,
river cruise company. So
very much.
check that out. I think that's important, and
Yes,
everyone following suit. I hope they follow suit in just as much responsibility. Everyone, again, Rosa's article is up on our site, blendradioandtv.com. You can read her one about barge cruising. Just type in Rose Palmer. You'll see both stories there. And you can also go to her website, quiltripping.com. So it's QUIL tripping.com. And also for the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association, they really do rock. They do so much. So if you are a destination, even if you're a winery, a cruise company, you may want to look at joining, because it is really about everyone coming together in the spirit of travel, food, and wine. And check them out. Go to IFWTWA.org. They have their next conference coming up in October. And by the way, that's on a cruise. How
I'll
about
be
that?
there. I will be
You
there.
might, oh, of course you are. It's cruising with Princess Cruises, and I
Yes,
think it's really cool. Don't you go to Vancouver and then go back down to California? You're
yes,
doing a proper cruise.
yes. And so this is a big ship, and it's we'll start in Vancouver and cruise along the coast, and we end in Los Angeles with a stop in San Francisco and Victoria.
What?
It should be a lot of fun. Yes, it should be
Like
very nice.
seriously, a bunch of travel writers and destinations on one cruise ship. Like, how much is going to happen after that? Like, stories abound. Like, what's happened on the cruise ship stays on the cruise ship. No, not when you have a bunch of food, wine, travel writers on
No,
there.
no,
No,
no, there will be no secrets. No
there
secrets
will
there
be.
at all. It will all come out.
I do want to tell people, if you're not a member of IFWTWA, you can still go on this cruise. If you're thinking
Yes.
about becoming a travel writer, a blogger, photographer, they're really cool. They have all kinds of conferences, educational. I think in the pandemic, I don't know, Rose, if you went to any of their webinars during the
Yes,
pandemic,
I have.
they
I've
they stood up and said, "Oh, we ain't closed down. We're doing stuff," and they've
right,
continued a lot of these programs, haven't they?
right.
Hmm.
Yes, the webinars are still ongoing on a regular basis, and they cycle through webinars about food, about wine, about a travel destination, about improving as a writer or blogger, or whatever. So it's not just food and wine. It's a variety of topics of interest
Yeah.
to the broader membership. And yes, you're right. The conference is open to non-members as well. So and their spouses or partners that want to come on the cruise. And it's a great deal. It's a great deal for a Princess cruise for 6 nights. You're not going to be able to find that kind of a price on your own for everything that you get that comes
Well,
with the cruise.
You really are
with
the
the
cruise
conference.
person. I had no idea you knew everything about the conference here. I'm like, okay, hand it
Well,
over to Rose. She knows about the cruise. She
so
knows.
I've also done 3 or 4 Princess cruises in the last year and have been writing about them on my website.
Oh, cool. See?
So I'm looking forward to doing another one. This is
Have you
this is
done
their
their
newest ship right
360?
now.
Have you done their 360 experience yet?
No, I'm looking forward to doing that. So the conference is on the Discovery Princess, which is the newest ship that just came out late last year, and the 360 is on that. And they
Oh,
just
you're gonna love it.
introduced, the 360 on the Enchanted Princess, which is in the Mediterranean here this spring. And I was toying with the idea of maybe doing a quick cruise on her while I was in Europe, but I haven't decided yet, so we'll see.
Everyone, if you go to blendradioandtv.com, just type in Linda Kazam 360, and you'll see the interview we did with the CEO of Princess Cruises. And he talks about the 360 experience. You can read her article about the experience. Like, seriously, I want the experience. Like, it's one of these really crazy, cool, immersive experiences where things move on your plate. You go on like a virtual journey through the Mediterranean, and as they put up the photo of the cheesemonger kind of thing, you're going to eat the cheesemonger's cheese, but things are moving on your plate. Like, there's lavender breezes with bees, and the bees aren't going to sting you because they're not real, but it's there, but it's real, but it's not. You have to check it out. Like, and then
can't
there's
wait.
something to do with wine that's aged in the ocean or something, but no one will tell me what it is, and you basically have to go
Okay.
to figure it out and know what it
Okay.
is. But apparently this is off the charts like nothing else.
That's
And
what
you
I
got to
hear,
think,
and I can't wait.
yeah, I know. I'm like, when we were doing the interview, I'm like, this sucks. I want. Like, this is great. I'm really enjoying this, but like, it sucks that I'm not in it. You know what I mean?
Well,
That's
you
what I
can
was
join
saying.
us.
Yeah, I wish I
You
could.
could do podcasts off from the boat with all
I know.
the
Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that
attendees.
be fun? We
That would
should.
be
We should
great.
do it.
Yeah,
Be
you
fun.
should.
It'd be super fun. We'll be in Maryland, but
Oh,
we
okay.
will do something on it at some point, for sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
But yeah, and listen, I'm excited for you in Europe. I'll be following you on social media. Tell everybody the best places to follow you, because you're going to be all over the place, and we want to see. We want
Right.
to know.
So I'm quilt tripping on Instagram and quilt tripping on Facebook. I only do those
Awesome.
two. That's all I do for now.
Yep. Yeah, there's a line. So everyone, again, quilttripping.com is a place, IFWTWA.org for the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association. And of course, keep up with us. We're here every second Friday talking to writers. And we also have a second Tuesday, a third Monday, and oh boy, we have 4 shows. It's amazing. But if you go to acast.com, just type in IFWTWA, and you'll also see that IFWTWA has its own podcast channel now with us, and there's a lot going on. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. Everyone, happy travels. Thank you, Rose. It's always a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you very much.
Hey there! Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.